how are you supposed to have a great life when unknowingly you're being hijacked? If you want change, you have to face it. And if you're not willing to face it, you don't get to change. You don't have another choice. And that's as good as it gets. I'm Darin Olien, and this is Win the Day with James Whittaker.
You're listening to Win the Day with James Whittaker.
What we do in life echoes in eternity.
Broadcasting from Los Angeles, California. Here's your host, James Whittaker.
Let's go!
Hey winners, welcome back to Win the Day. If this is your first time here, we sit down with some of the world's true change makers to give you all the tips, tools and strategies to win the day every day. The quote for this episode, it comes from an Aboriginal proverb and says, "Look after the land and it will look after you. Destroy the land and it will destroy you." Our guest today is health legend, superfood hunter, and New York Times bestselling author Darin Olien. Darin is best known as co-host of the Emmy Award-winning Netflix docuseries Down to Earth with Zac Efron. After spending nearly 20 years exploring the planet to discover new and underused exotic foods and medicinal plants, Darin developed Shakeology, which since 2008 has grossed more than $4 billion in sales. His first book, SuperLife, was a monster hit and a New York Times bestseller. His new book, sitting in front of us right now, Fatal Conveniences, has just been released. He's also host of the top-rated podcast, The Darin Olien Show. In this episode, we're going to talk about the importance of sustainable business practices on our health and the environment, Darin's personal journey and how various cultural influences shaped his mindset, the impact of everyday conveniences on our health, including hidden dangers in common household products, and how to master the art of healthy living. Before we begin, the right bit of inspiration can completely change the trajectory of someone's life. So if there's a friend or loved one out there who needs to hear this episode or could use some help to win the day, share it with them right now. All right, let's win the day with my good mate, Darin Olien. Darin, great to see you, brother. Thanks for coming on.
I'm stoked. You got me fired up then.
Awesome. Well, mate, I'm super excited to have you here, and well done on the new book. I can't wait to get into all of that stuff. To kick it off, what was the mindset around nutrition and health and even intentional living in your household when you were growing up?
Wasn't really. You know, it was just standard kind of, you know, for us, iceberg lettuce and Jell-O and some steak and potatoes. And as weird and cliche as that is, a small town in Minnesota. So it was kind of this, you know, mom had two boys running around, getting in trouble and jumping off things and bicycles and motorcycles and all of that stuff. So mom would just end up getting frozen pizzas and just throwing them in during the summer so that we could just make our own stuff. And then, you know, so it was, you know, tumultuous from a relationship standpoint from my mom and my dad. But from a health perspective, didn't really think about it. Right. And just kind of actively lived but I talk about this in my first book at 13, you know, being born premature set me off with a little skew, right? I had vulnerabilities. You know, we talked a little bit about your son, right? Your son that was dealing with some stuff. And so I certainly right away at birth had some challenges. And so it was 13 years old by myself reading an article in the Minneapolis Star and Tribune, and I saw it on this grapefruit diet. And it was the first time that I ingested something consciously and then witnessed and experienced a different feeling in my body. And that informed me, but of course I was just a kid, right? And so I felt the difference, but then it was kind of, I wanted to play sports. I wanted to get more kind of, not professionally involved, but a little more intentional. And so I started picking up my first weights and realizing, oh, you know, we can do a lot more than just sit here. So anyway, and then it just kind of progressed from there.
Yeah, and the story that you share in the book is one about your dad, and when he was diagnosed with what they believe to be chemical sensitivity disorder, not only did that turn his life upside down, but it sounds like it did the same for you too.
100%. Yeah. So that, cut to in the 90s, I was in college studying physiology, nutrition, all of that stuff. So I was interested in what was going on more and more. And my dad, high functioning guy. He was a tenured professor at the University of Minnesota. And so he was starting to describe to the family, and my parents were divorced at the time. So, but he would say like, yeah, I'm not feeling good, right? I'm lethargic. I don't have energy. I can't think. I'm foggy. And he was talking to us early on about these perfumes and fragrances are affecting me. And you hear
crazy.
That. Yeah, you hear that and you're like, Dad, like, come on. Like, what do you mean? We're not affected by it. Like, and then slowly, being an educator, he would make VHS tapes and hand them to us and record shows and talk to his doctors and then do research and print out stuff and highlight it for us and give it. And then he'd start doing it with his colleagues, saying, hey, if you're going to be in this wing and be in my office, you can't wear things that have fragrances or shampoos and conditioners and laundry detergent and clothing and the dyes coming off of it, all this stuff. And you're like, whoa. So in order to be around him when I'd come home from college, he'd send me these care packages of unscented everything. And that was my first naturally getting detoxed from it. And then once I started feeling and perceiving and smelling these things, I was like, oh, I actually don't like this. I was used to it like anyone else, but became a very real thing for him. And that very real thing was causing these problems and kind of spiraled him down into early retirement, disability. So the university acknowledged that this was a real thing, his doctors told them, and he had to retire on disability. And then ultimately what that led him to is isolation. And my dad was very engaging and cared about people and learned that it wasn't just academics that made a person, that connecting with people. So he was also maturing in his life with that. And then all of a sudden, boom, he couldn't perform the very thing that he was really finding a lot more rewarding later in his life. So then, he'd take on these trips and he'd go to the ocean to get fresh air and not be exposed to this stuff. And then he'd feel better, right? He'd just isolate himself. And ultimately, I believe that spiraled him down this path of picking up a drink after 30 years of sobriety because of the depression, because of the effect this had on him. And so that was and then he passed away years later from the diagnosis was alcohol. And they very rarely put that as the thing, but they don't know if he didn't have a heart attack, he didn't have a thing, his body just stopped. So, this book's dedicated to him, and it was a compelling notion to write this book because it was like when you're facing this, when you stare at this stuff, and the first educator being my dad telling me about this stuff, you can't unknow it. And people will find out in this book. You found out in this book. Once you realize something, you can't unknow it. And then it's up to you. It's not my job to convince people of anything. It's just like, here's some information. There's always a better way. There's always a much improved way of doing something. So still be in the modern day world, still, function, still win the day, but win it more, because the body burden of all of this stuff adding up over time, that's the danger. Not one thing in here is killing you acutely. It's the environment. And you quickly realize our environments are what expresses us either winning or not winning. Similar to epidemiological expressions of our life. What are we doing to turn on genes or turn off genes? Because largely we have certain formal genetics, the way we look, the length of my bones, like that type of stuff. But the expression of the health of our life is largely determined by our environments. Yeah. And so coming from this idea and this very real experience of my dad's spiral, I was compelled to write this so that ultimately underneath everything I do, to the best of my humble ability of being human, is trying to unravel and unpack something so that liberation can happen, more choices can be available, and so that people can live a life that's great.
Yeah.
And this exposure of these things that I didn't have a say in, you didn't have a say in, largely we were born into it, it's not okay. It's not okay with some of these processes and chemicals.
Yeah, it's a hell of a mission. You're doing some really great work. You've traveled all around the world. You've been exposed to different cultures, different rituals. How would you describe your life philosophy? And is there a particular ritual or anything like that that really helped shape the mindset the most that you have today?
That's a good question. I mean, it literally is infused in you by certainly season 2 of Down to Earth was just so beautiful because every land we went on, we did a ceremony with the First Nations people of that land. And so all of the trips in the 20 years of doing that, there is this, similar to your opening quote, like, take care of this land and take care of our environment, and it will take care of us. It is so abundant. It is so beautiful. But when we don't do that, we have a list of side effects. So from that perspective, the indigenous First Nations ideas from the First Nations people here in America that I've spent a lot of time with, and in Indonesia and India and Uganda and Senegal, like all over the place, there's a similar ideology or common sense to all of that. So I think, I don't know if it's a philosophy or not, but I believe and I know that this is the avatar. You and I get to walk around in these literal avatars, and we are infinitely connected from a one source, whatever you decide to label that source is. The droplet into the water, we are that. And the more we acknowledge that, the better our life will be, I believe, because the isolation, the siloing, the disconnection, the polarity, the disconnect of ideas and ideologies, that's a lie. But it's progressed by judgments, angers, fears, things like that. So.
You're right. It's a lie. Yet it occupies all the attention of everyone. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Out of everywhere you've been, where did you feel most connected to the planet when you were standing somewhere or lying somewhere?
The first answer is everywhere. There's memorable times for sure in the middle of the Amazon and Peruvian side and the Brazilian side, just because of the mana, Gaia expressing herself powerfully, just going, wow, right? It's like that perfect example of when we're not in the way, its life is just extraordinary. Also in the Great Barrier Reef, in the ocean, you're looking at just the extraordinary of this amazing planet. Then, a few years ago, I finally went home to where both sides of my family come from in Norway. And that certainly was just something different when you kind of genealogically know that your ancestors are directly from there. That was powerful too.
Yeah, I love it. Any wild animal encounters that you've that you've had, like Amazon? You're in anaconda country. You were in Australia. You get access to some of the most dangerous snakes and spiders and sharks around the world.
Yeah, luckily no sharks attacks. Luckily no snake attacks. I did. I got bit by a wild dog in the Yucatan. There was a snake nearby, so we just had to be aware of that. Weirdly, not to make this a big story, but I was hunting for certain things in Cambodia, and a government official knew that I was there, and he also had a farm, apparently, and there was flooding at the time, so he kept missing meetings when we were supposed to meet in person. Like, I had to helicopter some other disaster area and everything else. So he said, "Hey, I won't be able to make it, so why don't you go to my farm?" So he gave us the location, and we went, and it was kind of like this dilapidated old zoo, but it had wild creatures in it, from giraffe to lion. So apparently it was rescued from other areas to kind of give the rest of the life over. They could never be, brought back into the wild. And so there was one moment where a friend of mine, and so there was food forest all over in amongst all of this stuff. So we were checking all of that out and some of the things he was growing. And a friend of mine that I was with, he was reacting, and I looked over, and there's an orangutan, and it was in a cage, and that's not great, but it was the life. They can't reintroduce him, and so I never saw a real life orangutan. And so I went over there, and as soon as I pulled up my phone to take a picture, the orangutan reached his arm out and slapped the phone out of my hand. And it fell between the fence and his cage, which is maybe my arm's length. And in the nanosecond, the orangutan reached down and grabbed my phone, and I grabbed his hand, like he beat me to it. He pulled it in the cage and then was acting like he was going to break it. And so we had to raise all this stink, and one of the workers came over, eventually went in there, wrestled with him. The phone dropped and they threw it out. And I was able to get the phone back. This is on video too, by the way. Yeah.
That's amazing. I was getting very big Jurassic Park vibes the way that you were setting that story up.
Yeah. But it was a funny moment because he was playing, and he wanted it back, and he wanted to keep playing, and but he was definitely probably going to break my phone eventually.
Yeah.
So
that sense of play is such a big thing. It brings so much joy and connection. People united by things like sporting events or just any opportunities that you can get without things being so tribal or so competitive in a ego-driven sense. I feel like the world is missing so much more of those opportunities just to have some fun and a bit of joy, and animals, humans, just have an opportunity to get together without any ambition.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, pets and just enjoy and getting out and interacting and connecting. I mean, it's connection. We know how powerful connection is, and it's some of the greatest things in the world is going out naively, knowingly, I don't know anything in this area. And so I'm a complete, humble visitor to learn. And that would always set the stage of the connection first with any Indigenous or First Nations people or researcher or herbalist or whatever, to then go, okay, there's an established trust building. And then things would start to open up. You would find they would share things with you that probably don't share that often. They would show you things and then come away with like, I didn't know that. I didn't even know that plant existed on this earth. And those kinds of things. Every kind of superfood adventure was always kind of leading with the connection first. I needed to have, for me, deeply, I needed to have that connection of that farmer, that forager, that that person to then understand like what are you doing, how are you doing this, what can we do to make it better. And so
it's like any good business deal. You don't want to make sure that if you're winning, the other person's losing. In an ideal world, it's a win-win.
Sure.
Yeah, and I love that the philosophy with all the businesses and brands and things that you work with, it's very important to have that
100%.
alignment. You've had some massive career wins, as we touched on in the intro. Is there a particularly dark day that stands out along this journey? And if so, were there any lessons from it?
I mean, like the Minnesota kid naively believes every word someone says.
The naive Australian did that when he first came to LA as well.
Right.
You know, you take people at their word, do things on a handshake, to find out very quickly in the land of smoke and mirrors that it's important sometimes to have legal agreements to fall back on and hold other people accountable, but you don't think about that when you first get somewhere.
Well, legal agreements are kind of like this, you dip the toe in the water to then talk about things that may or may not happen, but they may happen. So how is this person... It's a good way to kind of start the uncomfortable conversation. Uncomfortable conversations are a necessity, right? The radical honesty. Like, hey, I want to do this deal, but if this happens and that happens, how are we going to work this out? And you're like, so these kind of things are important. And I would do that way too often. I would fling myself into situations going, hey man, I want to change the world here. And you've got an amazing technology. You've got a incredible perceived mission. So I would show up. I would show up in the middle of a country. And then I would go like, yeah, let's do it. And then I would include my attorney, if at all. And next thing I know, I'm funding stuff. I'm giving them money. There's no agreement, and they're off doing who knows what. And so it took way too long for me to acknowledge that. And I lost a lot of money and a lot of grief and
getting burnt out in the process. That's how I certainly felt when I was on the other end of those things.
100%. It's so exhausting.
Yeah.
It's so exhausting. And the other major one was my company Barucas. So Barucas is this nut out of the savannah of Brazil, and it checks all the boxes. It's good for the indigenous people. We're planting trees. It's a wild food, all of that stuff. I'm not here to sell it. I'm just saying, I'm setting it up. I mean, it means a lot to me because that nut is not only delicious, it's nutrient dense. So for me, as a person who, as a conscious capitalist, loves to find something that I know people are going to love, and it's going to help other people in the process indigenously. And man, last year we had internal fighting of my founders, right? And it was imploding the company. It got so toxic, I actually quit. I was like, I'm done. So I quit. And I remember walking through an Erewhon, and I saw it on the shelf, and I literally just like had a tear in my eye. I'm like, this thing that I care about and the people that I know down there, I have to walk away because this is toxic. So in that 2 weeks of quitting, take my name off of all the packages. I reconnected with a buddy, Steve Fabos, who just sold one of the largest bakeries in the United States, right? So he was making all these cake pops for Starbucks and everything else, and very successful, sweet guy, plant-based forever. And I know his son-in-law, and so I really know him. And he was like, I want to do, and he hinted at it before, I want to do something with you. I want to do something healthy. I want to do like superfoods and stuff like that. And so after that 2 weeks of quitting, and by the way, this was a year, dude. This was a year trying to get other investors to buy these people out. This is like, I'm desperately trying to make Barucas work. So this is a year of my life. This is more phone calls than I could possibly imagine to so many people within the company, in Brazil, all of this stuff. So I had exhausted myself. And then when I met Steve, congratulations, he sold his business. He's ready to do these things. He goes, what do you want to do? I said, well, we can kind of do anything. I said, well, I still have this. I kind of just quit. But we have this Baruca. He goes, well, let's look into it. 6-7 months later, we ended up buying the company back from everyone. Everyone was happy to kind of go off in their own directions. So Steve and I are now 50-50 partners.
Amazing.
And I worked so hard. I literally, when I quit, I didn't feel like there was anything left to try. And then serendipity stepped in, and timing and synchronicity and Baruka's, the energy of Baruka's or whatever it was came in. And now we are brand new team, huge energy, planning another trip here soon to kind of reinvigorate everything, and it's looking good. So.
Isn't it amazing how so many lessons from that? I mean, the power of relationships, the way that the universe can present you opportunities at the right time that you have to be open for.
Big time.
All of that. I mean, it's so important. Not to mention, if you were to put a dollar value on the amount of negative energy or just energy wasted from an entire year that could be allocated to so
Millions.
many. I know that because I've been there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a huge lesson in terms of just self-care and focusing on what's most important. And even I'm recognizing more and more. It was something that Gabby Reese shared, I know, who's a mutual friend of ours. When she was on the podcast, she's pursuing more and more the power of simplification and concentrated effort. And that's something that I'm trying to do so much more now as well. And it sounds like for you too.
Oh man, but I fail at that all the time. I get involved with way too much.
Yeah.
Like, and that being said, saying no to certain things.
We'll be back with the show shortly. I just want to let you in on a little secret. As you know, the win the day mentality is my life's work, and I've studied it for the last 15 years. During that time, I've helped thousands of people from all over the world to win in their career, in their relationships, and in their life. Well, for the last few months, I've been working behind the scenes on a special project with Success Magazine. For the first time ever, I'll be bringing you the exact blueprint that I've used to help the leaders of tomorrow to take their performance to the next level today. It's a self-study course with videos, activities, and a detailed workbook so I can personally walk you through everything. It's also highly practical, results-driven, and will transform your life like nothing else, guaranteed. So if you're ready to win and win big, add your name to the wait list. Just go to jameswitt.com/win. That's jameswitt.com/win. You'll also find a link to that in the show notes, and you'll be notified as soon as it's available. All right, let's get back to the show. You still see things through to the finish line and get them done, which is very, very important. I feel like most people, they're so busy driving themselves crazy, running around in a circle, never finishing anything. Yeah. At least you finish a whole bunch of amazing things along the way.
Some stuff, yeah.
Like seasons on a TV show.
Yeah. That's an effort for sure, but a loving effort for sure. Yeah.
Your new book, Fatal Conveniences, amazing read. You touched on it a little bit earlier, but what is the problem that you wanted to solve with the new book, and why did it fall on your shoulders to do it?
Many problems. I wanted to face things honestly so that we can do something about them. And when realizing from my dad's path, from these chemicals, from even the superfood path, because this is still happening in the superfood world. This is still happening in the formulation world. This is still happening in the food industry. This is still all of these things. Like, what do you mean you're having these propylene glycols and other flow agents that are in this flavor when it says natural? Like, so this stuff, we were having to reinvent for flavor companies or different manufacturers. We had to have to reinvent the way we were doing things. So this has been a theme of mine for a long time. I think the biggest thing was, I'd written SuperLife, like eat great food, get hydrated, whole foods, all of that. Let's celebrate life. Let's have a super life. So I'm staring at this going, yeah, but there's an invisible world here, from electromagnetic fields to formaldehydes and phthalates and BPAs and BPHs and PFAS and Teflons and dyes and formaldehyde. Like, that is all around us all the time, massively affecting pretty much the most primal aspect of our life, and that is our glandular system to actually move life forward. Meaning our testosterones are plummeting as a result of these endocrine disrupting chemicals. Our women's our estrogen levels are spiking high because of phthalates and things like that. So our men's motility is in the toilet. And they predict in less than 10 years, we won't even have sperm that's viable. So I'm staring at this going, well, how are you supposed to have a great life when unknowingly you're being hijacked by chemicals of all sorts, from the shampoos you're using to the moisturizers, to the clothing you're putting on, to what you're washing the clothes with, to what's in your home, on and on and on. It was like that moment, dude, where I was like, because, with the success of the first book, there's always so much more to get into. And from the environmental perspective, what I realized with this is I had to. Like, did I want to? No. I had to. It's different. So yes, it went into I want to, but it was informed deeper. It was informed with, is anyone else going to do this? And of course people have, like references I've used and people I've learned from. Dr. Leo Trisande, who's dedicated his life to educating on EDCs, endocrine disrupting chemicals, and other great researchers I've referenced in the book that have dedicated their lives to this. So yeah, but we need it on a bigger scale, because the big populations of people are just buying whatever they're buying because they're focused on prices. Again, of course.
And deceptive marketing.
Yeah.
You and I do the same thing, just in very different ways. Like, you and I are both trying to awaken people out of their complacency to recognize that a much greater, happier, more meaningful life awaits if you can start making a few incremental changes that add up to massive exponential gains over time.
Totally. Yeah. Well, that's the key. Yeah. That's the key. And if you don't know it, then you can't choose.
Yeah.
So this book is riddled with knowledge, and then choose to apply it or not. But like it doesn't have to be overwhelming. You could pick up this book, open a page, and learn something. Pretty much guaranteed, right? Because I learned so much deeper. Of course, that's a great thing about writing a book. You become, I amassed over 20 people of researchers to sift through so much. Each chapter could have been volumes of books, right? It's just almost, this one brought me to an edge for sure. This was like, wow, how do I organize this? How to start and stop and like trying to develop a system. Where do I stop? How do I do this in a way that is celebratory? And I really believe this is celebratory. It's
very non-judgmental. That's how it came across. And I feel like it would be very easy for someone, I know you're not a judgmental person, but I know it would be very easy for someone who's writing a book on this stuff to be judgmental when all that's doing is repelling people away from what it is. Yeah. And what you're doing here, what I found out, it's a filter. And I texted you because I said I thought the book was fantastic, and it's got my brain, it's created a new filter. Now, the filters that I have in my life already, I have a career purpose. That helps me make decisions, the right versus the wrong decision in the millions of decisions we have each day. I have a family filter as well. Is this good or not for me as a parent and as a husband, and making a happier home? And this one is an additional filter now. Every little thing, which I thought I had, but I'm pretty good with nutrition, but I don't know what laundry detergent and deodorant and toothpaste and freaking dental floss. I had no idea about any of this stuff, but you've made it very simple and very actionable for people to be able to start making one or two changes each day. See how you feel. If it feels like it works for you, then keep going.
Right. Well, thank you. Cause that was part of the line to walk. Like, so I more or less ended with, does this sound good to you? Right? Leaving with questions. Are you sure you want to do this? Similar to you, trying to turn on the switch of common sense, turn off the switch of apathy, right? And awaken that which we all fall victim to, the regular pattern of our habits, right? And then we become unconscious. But let's make sure the habits are winning, right? Let's make sure the habits are in our best interest and not be a victim of a system, because these things are systems. They're systems of production, they're systems of a product, they're systems of our system. Is this aligned? So, maybe not put the dental floss that has PFAS chemical that's connected to endocrine disrupting cancers, you name it, that you're putting in your mouth. Why they don't have to tell you? Because it's deemed a medical device. So if you're in shock that what I'm saying is shocking, then that's why there's all these little loopholes that I wish it wasn't the case. I wish the FDA, the FCC, the EPA, there's great people at these companies, so I'm not also throwing them completely under the bus. However, there's too much unregulated within this whole thing, right? So again, why I wrote the book, because people, from my perspective, aren't doing an adequate job.
Yeah. And
it's affecting you, it's affecting me, it's affecting your children, it's affecting our pets, it's affecting our communities. Plus, the thing that was blaringly obvious was you and I are ecosystems, right? We are an amazing ecosystem. You look at your skin cells under a microscope and you will be blown away, right? And every system of from digestion to your skin microbiome, to your eyelids, to your hair, to your tongue, everything is striving for homeostasis. Now add 60 to 80,000 man-made chemicals every year that's blasted at us. Every woman, from a personal care to beauty, is being exposed to over 126 chemicals. Most are endocrine disrupting and probable carcinogenic activity from them. You're like going, what? Exactly. That's what I was saying 30 years ago when my dad was telling me about this stuff. So bringing it up and out, going, hey man, I'm not saying don't wash your hair. Look towards brands that are not only from a packaging perspective are integrating and trying their best to do their best on all that stuff, because that also has effect, but from an ingredient standpoint that are not, sometimes I look at, as a formulator of products, it's easy for people to get lazy. I'll just take the natural flavor. Okay, but what's in the natural flavor that the FDA said was okay? Am I saying it's okay? Right? I was in shouting matches 15 years ago with Flavor House until the bulb went out. Oh, they keep saying this is a good natural flavor. I keep saying, why is there flow agents that are chemicals that I don't want my body in here? And then when I looked under the hood further, the FDA bylaws allows for certain things even to be in the natural flavor.
Yet they use it as like an endorsement. It's like almost like they're proud of it. Hey, naturally flavored. And most people go, cool,
exactly.
Sweet, sounds great. It's natural. It's like, well, hang on.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that if natural flavor pops up that there are dangerous ingredients in there. I'm just saying that there can be some dangerous ingredients still in there. Now, there are companies like Beachbody, which I formulate Shakeology. We actually went back to them and said, here's our list. This is how you're going to make our natural flavor. But on the label, it still says natural flavor. So you don't know the difference, right? Yeah. You have to do your work. So as stewards of people, because we have businesses, we are stewards of people on the planet, period. I don't even care what your business is. You are a steward. Take responsibility. Do the extra work to do the right thing. And if you don't know, don't just assume someone has the authority and saying that that's fine. Someone says that's fine. Guess where I'm going? You know, that's where all this stuff, every product in here, that's fine because it's on the shelf.
Yeah.
Right?
And a big theme of your work as well, like the whole idea of the ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. It's like, yes, you may pay, in many cases, you're going to pay more for this stuff in the short term, but the health issues that you're going to pay for down the track, imagine if you're 60 years old, 70 years old, you got health issues, you can't play with your grandkids, which is the only thing that you might want to do at that age, the golden age, the golden years of your life. You would give anything to be able to rewind the clock. And I see a challenge where people, it's the consumption of this stuff constantly. Like people who are putting away like 4 LaCroix a day or 4 Diet Cokes a day. It's just this overconsumption of these things that may have been a healthier alternative, but end up getting exploited and abused because people just have that appetite for it.
It's a good point because it's the body burden of the continuous of this stuff. Because if you look at, parabens, which show up in most of the personal care and beauty products, and phthalates as well, and PFAS, because if it doesn't wipe off, that it's giving you a good indication that there's a PFAS derivative forever chemical that's bioaccumulating. The reason I say all that stuff is that of those hundreds of chemicals that you and I potentially, if we don't have the awareness, are getting exposed to, the parabens and the phthalates have half-lives of a few hours. So the body has to deal with them. They are causing endocrine disruption. They are causing some problems, but the body rids them, right? Not even getting into compromised bodies already. Maybe there's something going on with the liver. Maybe there's something going on already with the kidney. Maybe there's something going on already with the gallbladder. That aside, if you're being exposed to these things, but then you're always being exposed to them. So, okay, I get exposed, I put my lotion on, but then 2 hours later, I'm touching up all my makeup, if that's what I'm doing, or I'm putting on clothes that I just washed that have formaldehydes and fragrances and 100 other chemicals. So you're constantly sort of phthalate, paraben, phthalate, PFAS. It's the constant, and then it's the everyday. And then you're also talking about your second skin of your home. Where are those exposures? So the whole point to all of this stuff is, if you want change, you have to face it. And if you're not willing to face it, you don't get to change. You don't have another choice. And that's as good as it gets. If you're cool with as good as it gets, that's fine. I'm not here to convince you. I'm not here to convince anybody. I'm here to supply knowledge because I saw my mentor, my father, my first teacher suffer, right? So it's in me. It's in me. So that's why I'm doing it. Ultimately, as someone who cares about all sentient beings on this planet, the planet herself, I care about you. I care about your producers. I care about everyone listening. I care as a human family that I would rather not have people suffer on my watch, right? So I want to give them an option. Again, people can do whatever the hell they want with this information. They can burn this book. It's not on me to do it. Even if you open it, every week and just go, okay, I'm gonna work on this one. I can definitely go online and buy a different dental floss right today. I can definitely, maybe not buy all of the latest fast fashion because most of it's formaldehydes, azo dyes, polyurethane, elastane, all of this stuff sucked next to your organ of your skin. Maybe just continue to kind of change your patterns. And then, like you said, as you integrate, then you start to receive. The challenging thing about humans are they kind of only feel how they feel, and they don't know how great they can feel.
I was thinking that just before. Yeah, it's so true. They have no context. Their norm becomes their ceiling. And it's like, well, actually, you can feel infinitely better if you start making some of these changes. An example of that is even just getting around inspiring people. If you're hanging around people who are depressed all day versus people who are inspiring you and trying to raise each other higher, the difference is huge.
I mean, every successful person on the planet has that as like, hey, if I look at the people you're hanging out with, I pretty much know your future.
Yeah.
Right. So then let's take that same idea, because I like that idea.
Absolutely.
Let's take the invisible and make it visible through the knowledge, right? And go, I have chemicals, I have phthalates, I have moisturizers, I have sunscreens, I have what the hell is in my laundry detergent? What the hell is in my what's in my underwear that's next to my genitalia? What is affecting my testosterone? Like, and then they shift that norm too. So now they shift that goalpost. So now it's normal. You're normal. Regular doctors say you're fine. No, you're not. That's not ideal, right? So all of these things become the adjunct of your life. And so if I look, I love that actually model to use. If I look at someone, I go in their home, I open their fridge, I look what they're putting on their skin, guaranteed that they are going to be suffering, guaranteed. And they won't even know it. And if you slowly start to improve these things, and I kind of think of it as going in to out, you're opening your mouth, probably start there. Filter your water. We now know, which I was super surprised in actually, one of the highest ways that we're receiving PFAS chemicals, which are forever chemicals that bioaccumulate, that are grandsons of Teflon, that are in everything, many things, that we're getting from our drinking water. So although a modern marvel of going to your house and having on-demand water, when there's 2.2 billion people in the world that does not have that. Okay, so that's not lost on me. Miracles of our conveniences are not lost on me. I just don't want that divorce from nature or divorce from something that is beneficial when it could continuously be beneficial as opposed to having side effects. So filter your water, because you're opening your mouth up to things that you can't see but are there, right? And that's only one, right? There's pharmaceutical drugs that they don't, like the things you flush down your toilet are in the waterways, are coming back to you because they're not sophisticated. The water treatment facilities are really good at making sure you don't die acutely of dysentery, typhoid, and cholera. And then the rest, they don't have any idea or don't have the funding or are not doing it to filter out the rest of the chemical freaking romance that we have in this, in our water. So filter your damn water. Make sure 60% of the calories here in America are coming from ultra processed food. That's chemicalized food. It's virtually foodless and nutrient devoid. Your body is not going to be satisfied, even though you get a satisfaction from the addiction. So I kind of think of these fatal conveniences as deal with what's going in your mouth first, and then as things kind of roll out from there, the skin, the exposure, the environment, and continue.
Yeah, I love that. In a world where, in America in particular, pharmaceutical companies can advertise direct to consumer, sunscreens are getting news articles about them because of reports that they cause cancer. How does anyone know what to believe? I mean, there's conflicting studies that come out saying this thing's really healthy for you. It's a superfood. Another study comes out and says this thing will kill you. How does anyone know what to believe about anything these days?
Exactly.
Which I'm sure has contributed to the complacency that people have.
Yeah. It's a we have lost the integrity of even our studies. I remember reading this article of this top researcher that I think between himself and his colleagues, there are thousands of research articles. I forget his name, but he was saying 75% of the research out there is compromised, right? By other interests. So yeah, it is startling. I mean, doing this research, it's like, is there conflicts of interest in any of this stuff? And yeah, there's a ton.
That's where I feel like even just being able to, when you find information that, or people that you trust to get your information from, do things, see how you feel, and just see what makes intuitive sense for you.
Exactly.
So reading this book, to me, it makes a lot of intuitive sense to me.
Right.
Basically, everything that you spoke about, I'm like, of course this makes total sense. Even things like AirPods. It's like, well, is it... Would it be a smart idea for me to have something on either side of my brain for 8 hours a day? Of course, that's a horrible idea.
Right.
You know, like it really is.
Right. Yeah. And then you can easily, people just go crazy and they're not going to change it.
Yeah.
And, from that perspective, just to touch on EMFs is that very clearly the research always came around, and the research can get nuts. And it's like, can I validate that? No. Do we need more studies? Absolutely. And all of this stuff. So maybe not throw it out on the population before we know. But on the EMF side, the frequency and the electromagnetic fields of a phone, we're not even supposed to have this close to 9 inches to our body. That's already in the fine print. And there was just an article of Apple coming out and saying, yeah, not a good idea to have this closer on your body.
Page 137 of the terms and conditions. Everyone just hits agree
exactly.
on.
And who do you know when they take a call? They're like this. I'm putting it in my pocket. And women, when they shove it in their sports bra or something, like you realize your heart is an electromagnetic pump, right? It emits electromagnetic activity. Our whole body does, right? That's how they measure your heart rate. And you have a device that is emanating, polarizing electromagnetic fields. Like, that's just not a good idea, right? So these things, some of the main things that kept showing up is free radicals. It was increasing free radical cellular damage by electromagnetic frequencies, right? Wi-Fi routers, smart devices, cell phones, iBuds, all of that stuff. Earbuds, iBuds. Hopefully they don't have iBuds.
Next year.
God. We're gonna see for you, like bionic eyes or something. No, thank you. I'll deal with my own. And so they saw free radical immune stimulation, not good amplification. So almost on the verge of what I was kind of reading between the lines of potentially autoimmune conditions. But that was never called out in the actual research. That was my opinion. And then the thing that really scared me was seeing the blood-brain barrier. Whenever you see a research article, it's BBB, blood-brain barrier. That is a very, very protective mechanism to not allow what shouldn't be in your brain to be in your brain. And this was showing that it was opening up the blood-brain barrier to allow one, there was probably several others, but one protein, albumin, was showing up in the brain, and that is not supposed to be there, and that causes all kinds of inflammatory conditions. And again, this stuff is long-term. We don't know. Yeah. This is dangerous, dangerous stuff that we're playing with, and that's where it gets really, from the moral perspective, from the ethics perspective, from the Minnesota innocent kid. Like, this is right and wrong. This is not right. You don't get to throw out frequencies and market this cell phone and these Wi-Fis and everything's good with 20-year-old safety data from the FCC. That's not okay. Not when I'm staring at all of this research that's showing that this is not okay, right? And we have children that the imaging of the brain imaging of a cell phone being up to a child, it's penetrating all the way through the skull, right? And gliomas, tumors, and cancer showing up all over for the past 20 years. Like, we're insane, right? So, we need to stop this stuff. And so that's the capitalism gone wrong. Like we throw it out there. We have a line item for when someone's going to sue us or when something happens. Similar to the pharmaceutical industries, they have line items for this stuff. They know that they're going to get sued, but their upside is infinitely in the billions, and the line item of a lawsuit is nothing compared to that. So similar to the stuff that, okay, we're seeing all this dangerous stuff of proximity, because proximity to these EMFs is where the danger is. The proximity of that phone to your head, the proximity of that towards your genitals. We're seeing testosterone. This is very similar to chemical exposure of endocrine disruptors showing up in our personal care and all these other places. The phone is doing very similar things. It's lowering urinary testosterone. It's increasing endocrine disruption. Like, this is as if it's a freaking chemical. And this is coming by way of invisible frequency and electromagnetic radiation. This is crazy, right? And then you, like, every time I hear of a parent, I immediately just go, what kind of diapers are they using? What kind of, the talc that was contaminated in heavy metals from Johnson & Johnson. And that was like a couple years ago. And that was on the market forever. Like, and you're like, what the hell, man? And so part of the thing that people have a hard time, and I don't know if it's maybe the younger generation doesn't have as hard a time about it. I don't know. But this delusion that someone else has done our safety for us, and that I can walk into any store and be relatively fine. Yeah, relatively fine from an acute standpoint. But you're using that shampoo, you're using that laundry detergent, you're using those same clothes, you're doing those same things all the time. You're exposing yourself all the time.
Yeah. What about you mentioned kids before. How do we get kids away from video games to connect more with outdoors? I mean, these things are so addictive, and it seems like it's also created a community that they seem to gravitate towards the devices more and more. Your
guess is as good as mine on that. I mean, it certainly starts with,
family holidays of disconnection. Like, we had Bruce Kirkby on the show, an amazing wilderness photographer who done some great stuff. Do you know Bruce? He's a great
I don't know him, but I've seen some of his work. It's incredible.
Amazing guy. And he was talking about he would take his family away, no devices whatsoever, and he would have completely different children when they returned.
Yeah. And I think, are you going to move away in a jungle by yourself? Probably not. You have to, in this modern day world, you have to consciously do that. So as early as possible, get those kids out in nature, get those kids in the streams, get those kids playing in the dirt, climbing the trees, playing with sticks, and it's good for their microbiome. It's good for their being. It's good for, show them make field trips. Where's your food coming from? Where is the farmer? How do they grow this stuff? The kids are amazing. You give them this. There's a great company called Food Forest Abundance, and they do education portals and programs and planting food where there was once lawn and creating more food security. And they're setting up curriculums. Kids, man, love this stuff because it's our nature. It is our nature. We can absolutely get addicted to this stuff. I'm too addicted to my phone too, because it becomes this business thing. You got to interact. You got to keep posting, because it's our own little special little mini TV set that we're marketing. So it's like, right? I feel so good when I've had a day where I'm like out on the land, even working, just had to jump on the tractor or got to do something. Or I'm literally, the other day I just went in the stream. I just literally went down in the stream and hung out.
Especially now as the phone is our camera. So if you've got kids running around or friends there and you want to capture some of these moments, it's hard to have the discipline to put that on airplane mode at the same time as you're trying to capture those memories.
Mode. Yeah. Please put it on airplane mode, and then just use it as a camera. Quit. Yeah. Unless you have an emergency or something. This is a practice. Right? We're seeing the detrimental. Hell, they're doing movies about documentaries about how gnarly this is and how, sugar, salt, fat, ultra processed foods, the same thing. It's the same playbook as social media. They're using things that will addict us so that we keep doing it. It's the same playbook. Okay. So are we mice, right? Just reacting? Or are we going to kind of take a quantum leap of consciousness and just go, okay, what kind of life do I want? Start asking yourself those questions. What do you want your life to be? Do you want 2 hours every day of just endlessly scrolling? Yeah. Like, I'm all for it if you're clear on your life, if you're content and more content that you're thriving. And then, hey, on a constant scroll, like sometimes I find these funny fail videos and it just gets me to laugh my ass off.
Yeah.
Oh, and Rob, I finally got to meet Rob Dyrdek. Big shout out to Rob.
Legend, yeah.
Legend, right? So ridiculousness. One fun fact that people don't know about me, I can watch ridiculousness because it's like I am so serious in my life about certain things to a point where I have to like also make sure, and the dogs help me because they pull me outside and they break up my days and stuff. Ridiculousness is my medicine, man. I can watch those freaking videos and laugh my ass off over just stupid shit.
Yeah.
Right? And man.
But it can be like a 3-hour wormhole, can't it, when you go down that? I interviewed Rob for Think and Grow Rich, The Legacy, which was my second book. Amazing guy. I couldn't believe the journey and stuff that he's been on.
And now his dedication to his, like, I don't even know what to call it. You can call it time management. That's kind of, it's his ability to maximize what he's doing, but also he's spent a lot of time, and he says it better about himself than me, but carving out exactly what he wants, getting clear. Like, I want to spend time with my family. But I also want to create this, and I want to have security of finances and money and purpose and all of these things. How do they interact, and how do I carve that out? If I were to say my last relationship that I was in, I suffered and she suffered because I was so out of my mind, busy, like out of my mind. To get this book out was 2 years with only 2 weekends off. Saturday, Sunday, all week, because I have the rest of my life. I'm shooting stuff. I'm doing stuff. I'm podcasting. I'm shooting TV shows. And then I'm like heavy research. What I had to shut off everything else, because to do something like this, it takes a different part of your being. It's so intense to go through all that stuff. So relationships suffered as a result. And if you have some consciousness, then you can, hey, this isn't going to last forever. But I failed at a bunch of stuff. So you see things when you step over the line of stuff. So I think it's really important to ask what you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Whenever I help people, the first 2 questions I ask is, who are you and where you want to go?
Bingo.
That's it. We can get those things done. And Rob talks about his rhythm of existence playbook.
Right.
I've never forgotten that. The way that he talks about that, it's about creating an entire life ecosystem about being your best and giving you energy.
Totally.
If I want to go for Paris for lunch with my wife on her birthday tomorrow, I'll do it, because he's created an entire method of being able to do that. Which
big
is so
shout
cool.
out to Rob, huh?
Shout out, Rob. Final question before we get into the rocket round. On your best day, what's an affirmation that you would write on a flashcard that you could show yourself on your worst day?
Shit. That's a good question. I would just say, who are you really? Because what you're being right now is not who you are.
Self-correction exercise. Yeah, I love it. Let's now move into the Win the Day Rocket Round. 10 questions for some quick answers. You up for this one, Darin?
I'll see how quick I am. Yeah.
Number 1, what quote inspires you the most?
I tell you one that sticks with me all the time is, I think it was Aristotle. The one who is wise knows he knows nothing.
So good.
Yeah.
Number 2, morning coffee or evening wine?
Neither.
What's your go-to beverage of the day? Is there one that you just have even just to enjoy the ritual?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I'm a formulator, so I make cacao concoctions with tons of adaptogens, and I do like a good stimulant. I'm just not a coffee guy, but I do like a good matcha. I do like a guarana from the Amazon. Feels really good. I'd like a good stimulant that way, but a good kind of elixir cacao concoction with a bunch of adaptogens.
Number 3, what's one bit of advice you would give your 18-year-old self?
It's a good question. I actually looked at that one when you sent it over, and I was like, I stumbled at it. What I would say to my 18-year-old self, hook in and hold on, because it's going to blow your mind, and the dreams you have, we're going to trump those dreams times 1,000.
I think that's a hell of a motivator for everyone. I think that's awesome. Number 4, what book do you gift the most, or is a book that changed your life the most?
This is an interesting one. Actually, one when I was going through some deep spiritually awakening moments 30 years ago, The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. It was a volume series by Barrett T. Spalding. Incredible journey into, whether it was true or not, fiction, could be nonfiction, but it was talking about as a walking master in this world, what does that actually look like? And so it was a journey, because I resonate with exploring, because I've explored a lot of places. So it was this team exploring, are there real masters around this world who are exceptional, extraordinary, connected, enlightened beings?
So it helped you answer the call to adventure.
Big time. Yeah. And adventure, and also external adventure, but the adventure of internally of who I am.
Yeah. Number 5, was there a vulnerability you once hid within that became your superpower?
Yeah, I mean, it's the depth of feeling. I think, the empathy, the feeling of like, let's use the example of the superfood hunting. I'd feel connected to the people I was working with, and it wasn't just transactional. So all of that turned into this pursuit that drove me deeper than I even realized, right? And so my care gets placed into every project I put in because of the empathetic aspect of myself, the love that I've gotten connected to myself. So empathy could be just another version of love. I love people, and I love them to not suffer. I loved my dad. I love the environment. The pillars of Down to Earth was built on that. So everything I'm doing has that kind of deep sense of feeling about the world.
There's an invisible energy from real connection that just can't be manufactured.
Big time.
Number 6, what's one thing you've learned about failure?
It's a freaking superpower. Oh my God. Like, I'm not seeking to fail, but I embrace it because I will fail. And when I fail, if I can extract listen, failing, it's like hot water pulls out compounds in a tea. So life is hard and you're going to fail. So what compounds, what great gifts can you pull out of that failure? And that to me is a massive superpower.
Number 7, if you could sit on a park bench and have a conversation with someone alive or dead, who would it be?
JFK.
What would you ask? I feel like he's an interesting one for you. I wouldn't have expected you to say JFK.
Yeah, it's some weird connection to that. He's popped up into my life, and I've been fascinated with that because I'm fascinated with the morality and the ethics of what I perceive him to be in that position.
Is it the champion of the people rising against a tide that was not so accepting of...
100%.
Yeah.
And the character that I perceived him to be is like, what did he do? He would go out to the people and literally knock on their door. Robert Kennedy was also similar, right? They would go out like, what are you suffering from? And they were an elite family, and yet they had the humility of going what was right and wrong. And of course you want to ask him, like, some of those speeches you're talking about, like a deep state kind of shit, like what was really going on? Like, was that real? And hey, how do you think you were killed, and why do you think you were killed? And that kind of conviction in the face of, clearly he was seeing something deep within a government. Clearly he had a vision of something greater, so he would talk about it and share it. So that I was just going with my instinct as soon as you said that.
Yeah, I love it. Number 8, what tool or resource best helps you run your life or your business?
I think the early morning, for sure, would be the meditation, the journaling. I get up at 4 every morning, and the peace and the cultivation of who am I, what am I, and where am I going is a daily practice.
Do you write physically, or
Yes.
I can't imagine you would have a digital journal.
Yeah, I used to stream of consciousness with my eyes closed on a computer, but now since it's dark out and everything else, I just have a light candle, and I now write. I go back to writing and journaling, and it feels more.
Yeah, and what are those questions that you ask yourself again?
Who am I?
Yeah.
What am I, and where am I going?
Yeah.
Now, those are the foundation for everything. Why am I writing this? What am I doing? What's the purpose? If I'm uncomfortable when I'm doing something and I don't know why I'm doing it, and I will literally just go, if I don't know why I'm doing it, when things get hard, because it's always hard to build anything.
Yeah.
It's always hard to create anything. And so when I get faced with this is getting hard and I'm not very clear why I'm doing it, I'm going to either figure out why, or I'm going to leave it, right? And I won't do it, right? I had a very, very clear reason of writing this book. And the starting point was my father. So this was 100 times harder to write than my first one. And I definitely wanted to quit a few times. And so having the reason and a strong why will show up when life happens too. So cultivating those questions, being proactive about those questions every day helps me to navigate a very busy life.
Number 9, share one thing on your bucket list. Is there anything left?
Yeah, I mean, I'm moving on another one. I have more to give. I have more TV shows. We just found out, Lou, driving here today, we got nominated for 4 more Emmys.
Amazing.
Of the second
and well
season.
deserved too.
Thank you, of the second season. But I'm also working on a brand new TV show, getting into some other things, a problem solution. So I just really like to unpack stuff, educate, learn, expand. My bucket list it's not necessarily a destination. It's getting water, power, food, shelter, and eliminating waste on the planet. And so that we can have a better shot at, having the greatest life ever.
Yeah. And speaking of your show, shout out to Michael Fox and the Fable Food Co team in Australia. That episode was fantastic. I know those guys really, really well. So they're doing big things. And
nice. God, that was so good.
I still haven't had one yet, because Michael keeps coming over here, and I'm like, God, but I will be back to Australia soon, and I will be going straight to get a Fable Food Co burger.
They should. I think it's being distributed here now.
I begged him. I'm like, come on, Whole Foods. I know when I met up with him, I think he had 70 or 80 meetings in the space of like 4 days. It was something crazy like that.
Wow.
He's meeting with all these different things. So
Right.
I have no doubt he's on the fast track to the company on fast track to big things.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And final question, number 10, what's one thing you do to win the day?
I mean, it's the morning. It's got to be. I think from meditation to journaling, then there's this secret little thing that I do after that. That is making action steps out of that space. That to me is more specific to your question. Because, everyone can say meditate. Everyone can say journaling. But then out of that kind of clarity, it then crystallizes in my day. What am I doing today? And I'm then starting from that space, being that truer architect of what I perceive.
Yeah, I think that's such an important clarification when people just talk about gratitude, journaling, meditation, to take it to that next level. It's even like reading a book. Reading a book, how are you going to action it? Even if it's, it's really important. Well, there are a bunch of ways to connect with Darin, and we'll link to all of these in the show notes. You can follow him on Instagram at Darin Olien, visit his website, darinolien.com, and grab a copy of his awesome new book, Fatal Conveniences, on his website or anywhere that you grab books. Again, all that and more will be linked in the show notes. Darin, great to see you, mate. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Brother, this has been awesome. Thanks, man.
Thanks for joining me on another episode of the Win the Day podcast. We want to hear your thoughts on what we covered today, so drop a comment on the YouTube version of this episode with your favorite takeaway, any questions you have, or what actions you'll be taking as a result of what was shared in this episode. And if you found value in the Win the Day podcast, leave a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You'll find a link to both of those in the show notes. It'll only take you a few seconds, and more ratings really helps other people discover the show so they can get the mindset upgrade they need, and we can bring more winners into the Win the Day movement. That's all for this episode. Get out there and win the day. Until next time, onwards and upwards, always.